for the interview, I want to draw Natasha out a little bit because she made it possible that this book happened. I have been trying to write the book for 10 years, and her tenacity and organizational skills and compassion around my dyslexia, it just made it possible. And we just showed up and got it done every day. And so I did the book because I talk about this all the time. And I would be curious for you to share like why you jumped onto this project.
Yeah. So I hopped on this project. Kristen and I have known each other for almost 30 years now. And have had a long-lasting friendship that has woven its way through different phases of our lives. And we've always managed to stay in touch and reconnect really nicely, if it's even been a couple of years. And it just sort of seemed like both of us we're at the place in our lives where it made sense to partner again on this and to get it done. And I love helping people realize their dreams. And I know, Kristen, you've been wanting to write this book for, the better part of 10 years or so, or been thinking about it certainly. And it also really speaks to a lot of my core values, I think, in terms of helping people be at their best and trying to be my best self as I make my way through my own life and help others realize their best selves. So I think what you talked about at the end in terms of hope and way power and willpower, really it's about us all doing better and feeling better in our own bodies and in our own minds. But that also gives the space for us to each bring to the world what we can and to make our own communities and lives a little bit better, hopefully. And so I think that is really a strong driver for me. The other thing I'll say is that I'm a firm believer in the experiments and feeling what it's like in my own body or in my own life to sort of get things. And that's something that Kristen and I share, right? So we both have this approach of, this is all great, but does it work for me? Does it make sense to me? And does it fit who I am? And I think when I got to see the real impact of food in my sort of life and family sphere is when I became an aunt. And so often I would be out with my sister, or I'd be out with have my nieces when they were little, and we'd be just on the verge of that meltdown. And I'd realize like they're hungry, really, right? And so I just started carrying food with me in my, use some fruit, some nuts, a meat stick in my purse. And at the first sign of crankiness, I would just pull them out and we'd stop what we were doing and we'd eat. And it was transformational. It was like we're going to go home in tears and not see the zoo, or we get to actually have a nice outing together. And it was really, and of course I would eat too. And I wasn't really focused on me because I had more agency around managing myself as an adult. But what I realized was very quickly was that any adults I was with were also like, do you have snacks for us? And so it became kind of like the, snack lady with food in my purse at all times. But it really made the difference in terms of the quality of experiences I was able to have with my nieces. And now they're both grown and can generally feed themselves. But it became really tangible, I guess. It became more than just sort of a concept of knowing, yes, it's good to eat, to like really how much it can impact in the moment within a very short period of time, the quality of a relationship and of an experience.
Yeah, I was thinking when I do 2-day trainings for various groups, and when I start, I generally introduce, like when I first became aware of like the impact sugar versus protein can have on people. And I thought I would share that story. I worked with kids in psychiatric crisis in Vermont, and there was this young man who was really about my size. So if we were in the same room together, you would be like, she is a tall woman, because I'm about 5'11", and I'm pretty athletic. And when he got angry, he hit people and sent them to the hospital, which was why he was in our program. And so he came in, we put him on a behavioral program, and he did great. And like got all of his points. And at the end of the day, if you got all your points, you had a choice of different things that you could win. And he chose a Snickers bar. And 2 hours later, he was trying to kill us. And so the next day we restrained him, and it was a mess. And the next day he got all of his points. Like during the day, he was this great kid, and then he'd get all his points, and we'd give him a Snickers bar, and 2 hours later he would melt down. And I was a biology major, religious studies minor. I was not a I knew nothing about psychology, and I'm like, that is biological. So when it was my turn to be in charge, because we rotated being in charge, before the shift, I went down and I got him a bag of like little men with toys in it, and the ones that are throwing their grenades and the guns and I was like, at the end of the day, because he was doing so well, I'm like, toy? Gun, and they were like, why are you giving a violent boy violent toys? And I'm like, because I don't want to die. I don't want to give him a Snickers bar. And the evening went by fine. And so I got more toys, and then the kids were playing, and then I had a weekend, and they gave him a Snickers bar, and it went horribly wrong again. And when they were processing with this young man, like, what, like, why did you have three days of no problems? And he's like, I don't know, but I am staying away from Snickers bars. Like, he didn't actually want to be that mean. And he was really clear. He's like, I want my way, and I don't want to hurt people, but I don't know how not to hurt people, because his dad was physically abusive. But like, that seed right out of college, when 30 years ago, like, I chewed on that seed, like, what was going on? And what was going on is the Snickers bar would just drop his blood glucose out so quickly that he would be in his reactive brain. And to get what he wanted, he did what his father role modeled. He wasn't a bad kid. He tried really hard. And we were actually feeding him something that wasn't helpful to him. And I think that happens all the time. So that's part of what the seed of this book is like.
Yeah. And I think of it when I am talking to people about our book who, haven't really thought about some of the concepts, or aren't really that tuned in to how food impacts them and their day. One of the sort of the language that I use is hangry, because we've all kind of had experience, or we understand like this hungry, angry thing, and you need to feed yourself. And what's missing from that piece, I think, is like, yeah, you need to feed yourself. And if you're really on that edge, you need some of that quick sugar, right? Like in the lizard brain treat, but you need to back that up with something that will be longer lasting, or it's not going to really have the effect. You're just going to be back to hangry again in a short period of time. And then Kristen and I both are starting to do some work with food insecure people. And with them, I think of it sort of as like chronically hangry. Like, you think you're hangry if you've missed a meal or two. What if you haven't had anything to eat for a few days, right? Like, we'll just imagine what mental state that puts you in and how you see the world. And it starts making a lot more sense why people can become really reactive to what's going on around them, and sort of that feel of loss of control, because they don't really have control of the physiology even in their own bodies. Yeah. But sort of paired with that, the other thing that I really like about the work we do together is that it's a normalizing factor. We all have the same physiology if we're human, right? So it's not, this person is food insecure, this person is well educated, this person is, like, it doesn't really matter where you're coming from. If you're deprived of food, you're going to fall into that same physiology. And so I think it also, some of the concepts that we talk about in this book are really, really important tools for starting to remove some of the stigmatism that's associated with people who like you said, in the judicial study, that,
Yeah.
so whether it's in the criminal system or whether it's, socioeconomic or whatever it is, like, we could all be there if we drop and spend too much time and learn that the lizard brain is the safe place where we need to spend our,
Right.
spend our days.
Right. And that's one of the things that, like, yes, I've been trying to write this book for 10 years, but what the past 10 years has given me as a clinician and public speaker is, like, I have talked to and because it's not quite in the bio on, like, who have I tested this out in, right? Because there is no double-blinded crossover placebo trial, right? This is just hours and hours and hours and hours of my experience. And so for the first 15 years, for the first 10 years of my clinical practice, I was working with people who had failed medication, who had failed therapy, like they still hadn't stabilized. And after working with kids in crisis, I was like, there's got to be physiology behind mental health, and I want to figure it out. And so they would come to me and I when I was a new practitioner, I didn't know what to do. And as a naturopath, I had been trained to give St. John's wort or 5-HTP or all these supplements. And what I noticed is they weren't eating. And I was just like, well, let's have breakfast. And guess what? They stopped having panic attacks at 10 o'clock. I'm like, let's have lunch. And and those first 10 years, I really worked with people with complex trauma and addictions. I was a wellness director, and people would get their sobriety legs faster. And after 10 years, I was like, I really want to work with people in groups. And where I got to go test that out was with executives in terms of optimizing their brains for better creativity and decision making. And it's the same problem. Like, it doesn't matter if you are a CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, you may not present as you may not identify as anxiety or a mental health problem, but you are making poor decisions like the judges were. Or you could be a mom with 3 kids who in this COVID moment is trying to keep her job and keep her kids in school and is way overwhelmed, and like, food is actually going to help you. And hopefully the book has quick snacks that can really help you. And then there's this whole population that is food insecure and is in poverty and lack of education. They don't even, finding food is hard, but helping them know what food to choose when it's really important is going to make a difference in their lives, so that they know to eat a protein bar before they go to an interview that will give them a job. And so regardless, and I've tested it out in all of these populations, and guess what? Human physiology is human physiology, and being in a reactive brain is always messy. And it just kind of depends on how much practice you've had being messy, but that doesn't mean your internal experiences. You may fool everybody else, but it's still a bad internal experience. And so, like, I feel really confident with the tools that we put in the book, and I hope that it helps the full range of human experience, because I think we used to know about this and we've just forgotten.
Yeah, I think it makes intuitive sense, even if it's important, and we've spent extra time explaining the physiology, because that can be a really helpful driver in sort of trying it and then maybe going back to older food habits or eating habits and then trying it again and coming back to it. So understanding the why can be a really powerful leverage point, but it works even if you don't understand the why. And it works even if you just think I feel better in my body now. I feel better in my surroundings now. And that's, I think, one of the things that I've found really powerful with this is, we offer tools that can help within a few minutes to, experiments to do for a few days or for longer, but wherever you're at, wherever someone is at, there's some place for them to plug in and have at least a few moments of, oh, like, okay, this feels better. And then that's something to build on.
Yeah. And I would build on that in terms of what Natasha was saying earlier around the experiments. Like, this is not a book that we expect you to do in 30 days. Like, read parts of it, try it for a few days, try something else for a few days, and build up that visceral repertoire of like, this helps me.
Yeah.
I think that would be my one advice in terms of reading the book.
Yeah, and to understand that it may not be, even if you don't recognize or don't feel immediately that you feel better, what a lot of people say is that when they go back to their previous diet, they recognize that they feel worse. And so just depending on you and your experiences and sort of how you're set up and your mind, brain, body relationship in those 4 quadrants in terms of actualizing really internalizing those experiences, you may be more cued into when you don't feel good as opposed to when you do feel good. And that'll come with time. It'll change over time, but allowing yourself that space to be like, oh, those are equally valid observations.
So to wrap this up, I thought what would be a fun way of answering is like, what in the book are you pretty consistent about doing? And what by writing the book have you gotten better at? Is that personally a fair question? Yeah, we can each answer that.
Yeah.
Because let's be clear, we are not perfect at doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are definitely things that I pull out for those higher stakes events. Like before, one of the things that I do in other parts of my life is to organize big events, now virtual events, but still it's a similar thing. So I regularly have protein snacks, like make sure that my protein is covered, like with meals. And I'm also pretty good at if I indulge in a treat at home, or if I'm out, or if it's a birthday party or something, and I have like that big slug of sugar, like from a piece of cake, and I love cake. I don't say, no, I don't eat that. I'll eat it, but then I'm pretty good about like within a half an hour getting some protein in to try to balance the impact that's going to have on my physiology. One of the things that I've gotten better at really is utilizing the power-ups throughout the day. And so not just working out at, like, check, that's done for the day, and then sit for 12 hours, but to try to get up and move my body, even in small ways, somewhat regularly. If I have a whole bunch of meetings lined up, that can be trickier, but just really trying to consciously make time for getting up and just, just stretching, moving around a little bit. And that has made a really big difference for me.
Yeah. I think historically, part of why I could write this book and do this work with the people that I did the work with is I'm dyslexic. And so like, if I don't feed my brain and I don't exercise and I don't sleep, like then I can't spell my own name. And so like, I needed these tools to optimize my own brain. When we started shortly before we started writing this book, I was in a motor vehicle accident. And I think doing the chapter on movement, really, I had helped other people do it, but I gained appreciation about doing power-ups and getting walking in. And until you get those pieces in, doing heavy workout things is really hard to do. And now that I've lived that experience, like it really helped me to write that chapter and articulate that, not for other people, but for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm still working on becoming, working towards the athletic person that I used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Writing the book was a good process for me personally, and I hope it's helpful And I think it was for you.
Yep, absolutely, for me as well.
And we both hope that it's really impactful to your life, whoever is listening to this. And we would love to hear from you, and we would love you to share it, because the more you share it, the more it's easier for us to pivot into our next life, which is helping other people with know this information and learn this information. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.